Welcome to Spirit of the Midwest, a show featuring interviews and stories exposing the deep values and pride found in the heart of America. I'm your host, Wesley Noble, here today with my co-host, CK Hicks.
And before we get started, you heard us talk about Mostly Serious in our previous episode, and they partnered with us once again to make this recording possible. So we get to do an in-person interview today because of the equipment they sponsored, which is really amazing. Mostly Serious designs and builds beautiful online properties with a focus on e-commerce sites, software apps, and custom marketing sites. They're headquartered right here in Springfield, Missouri, and also have a group out in San Francisco. And you know, Wesley, we talk a lot about the Midwest values, but when we're out and about at creative meetups and we see these folks and get to talk with them in person, they're a great group of just really passionate web workers, and they believe in real collaboration. And I know they treat clients right as they work hard to deliver lots of value. And speaking of value, they also partner with Give Ozarks, which is a charitable foundation serving 58 counties across central and southern Missouri. They've served over 2,700 charitable funds since 1973 and strive to enhance the quality of life in our region through things like resource development, community grant making, collaboration, and public leadership. So whether you need a new website, an online store, an app for mobile or desktop, get in touch with these folks at mostlyserious.io or on Twitter at mostly_serious. And big thanks to them for their support of Spirit of the Midwest. It means a lot. So we're here today with Doug Wilson, also currently based in Springfield, Missouri. You might have seen his film Linotype or seen some of his work in letterpress and other industries. So Doug, it's a pleasure to talk to you today.
Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so can you give us kind of a quick intro on like what brought you to where you are creatively? I know we've talked before the show about your film work, we've talked about design, we've talked about video and other things that you've done, like dabbled in, but what kind of brought you to where you are, and specifically within the context of Springfield?
Yeah, so I am a graphic designer by trade. That's what I do. I went to Missouri State, was SMS at the time, but graduated as Missouri State for graphic design. So that's where I come from. Everything that I do is from a graphic design background. But I have always been interested in other disciplines. While I was at Missouri State, I was a photographer for their photo services department. So photography has always been a big part of my quote-unquote, creative output. And then I would say about 5 years ago, I basically was naive enough to think I could become a filmmaker. And I had an idea for a film, and I partnered with two of my good friends, Brandon Goodwin and Jess Hugel, to make a film. And by the time I realized I didn't know what I was doing in filmmaking, it was too far in the process to quit, so I just had to continue forward. So yeah, I think a lot of people do get a little confused because they're like, wait, are you a designer, or are you a filmmaker, or are you a letterpress printer? I don't really see those distinctions. I did letterpress when I was in school. I studied and learned using computers from the very beginning, so I'm very comfortable with that. But I also really like other forms of storytelling and other forms of visual communication.
Very cool. So now, you said when you were in school, you went to school here in Springfield, correct?
I did, yeah. I went to Missouri State University in Springfield, Missouri. I didn't want to go there, actually. I was originally, after graduating high school, I really wanted to go to the Art Institute of Colorado in Denver, Colorado. Went out there, visited, signed up, the whole thing, and thankfully my parents had a bit of foresight in realizing that it was extremely expensive. All private schools are, and so they convinced me to spend a year, kind of do undergrad work at SMS, and thankfully they did that because as I got more and more into the art and design program at Missouri State, I realized it was at the time a very, very strong design program, and had some really amazing teachers that I learned from, and so I ended up staying at Missouri State and graduating from there.
Very good.
So you've always been in Springfield then, right?
Well, yes, for the most part, yes. I was so I'm Missouri born and bred, born in Kansas City actually. When I was 12 years old, my parents we moved down to the Springfield area, actually moved to Billings, Missouri.
Yeah, oh nice.
Which is nice if you don't have to live in it. It's a very small town. My 6th grade class in Kansas City had 1,200 students, and the town of Billings had 900 people total. So it was a bit of a change. But yeah, so I've always been in the Springfield area. So I've been now in Springfield for over 15 years, I guess. So definitely from Springfield.
That's amazing. That's hilarious. I'm actually from Billings too. Like
Where?
I used to live in Billings.
Oh,
so
really?
like out in the country between Billings and Republic.
Where? That's where my parents live.
Farm Road 31.
Okay, well we my parents live off of Weber Road and like near Rose Hill.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Just near County Line Road.
That is hilarious.
Like Twin Lakes Drive is where they live. So I didn't know that.
Yeah, Billings cracks me up. It's like a flea market and a gas station.
It's like a flea market and a gas station, and while I was there, they went from a blinking four-way stop to a real street, like an actual stoplight. So that was a big deal. That was a big deal
big time.
in Billings. So yeah, it was a bit of a change to go from like Kansas City to Billings. But,
I bet,
but it, there are ways that you can, I had some good teachers there, and but I was definitely ready to be out of Billings and only go back there to visit my parents.
So is Springfield kind of like the happy medium for you, or do you prefer the even larger context like Kansas City and so forth?
That's a good question. I have learned to really appreciate Springfield and its size. I would prefer a larger city. I really like Kansas City. I really like St. Louis. I like other cities as well.
Mm-hmm.
Springfield, though, has a lot of advantages. 30 minutes from now, I could be camping out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that's true.
Which is something I did a lot when I was in college. It only takes 15 minutes to drive across town. There are a lot of things that are nice about Springfield. And what is nice also about Springfield is there are a surprising amount of creative people. They sometimes are kind of out in the woodwork, but you can find them, and I think that's what's really nice. There's only 1 degree that separates any creative person in Springfield, and I think there's a surprising amount of people that are creative in this town. You just have to look a little harder to find them.
That's what I found too. When I moved here about 5 years ago, I started off as a freelancer and then went and worked for a little company, and then ended up getting dumped and working as a freelancer again.
Right.
And I was like, there's got to be people here that do the kind of work that I do, and it just took some Google searching and emailing, and then those people you say, do you know of anybody else? And they're like, oh yeah, there's these other 5. You're like, where are they?
Yeah, right, exactly.
But it's great once you find them, and like that's how we discovered Mostly Serious. That's how I discovered my my current employer, and it through those little meetups and coffee shops and the taverns and the little the little moments you get to meet people and you find out what they do, and it's a pretty tight knit group once you're like, oh, so and so,
yeah,
like,
exactly.
oh, yeah, it's my brother or whatever.
Right. Yeah, I like that. That's something I really like about Springfield it's a very tight knit community, and I think what's nice about Springfield is it's such a small town that no one really has the right to get too much of an ego, and so like. If you need somebody to do filmmaking, okay, well, you contact this one person and he'll hook you up, or you contact this other person and she'll find a copywriter or a web designer or an app developer or whatever. Like, I think that's what I like about this creative people in Springfield. Yeah.
So now, have you worked in creative context? I mean, I know you've traveled, and we'll talk about some of that, but like, as far as just your direct creative work, have you done much of that outside of the Midwest, like over on the coast, or and like how has that been different for you, just as a creative venture, like working in other places besides this area?
Well, so what's kind of interesting is almost all of the work that I do, even though I'm based in Springfield, is with companies outside of Springfield. I've worked with a couple bigger companies that were based on the East Coast, and for a while I was doing a lot of work with a company that's based on the East Coast, but actually out of London. And so I ended up having to travel there some. And I think what's good about the Midwest is you have access to both coasts. I've worked with companies on both coasts before. I've never physically worked there, though. I've only ever worked, as a freelancer for them or as a consultant for them or something like that. And it's kind of nice because of the low cost of living, right? In the Midwest. It's kind of nice to be able to either not have to charge as much because I live in a cheaper place, or B, to have that access. Okay, I'm just a couple flights away from New York or from San Francisco or from London. So my experience has been that most of the companies I've done freelance, I've done some stuff for small companies or friends here in town, but a lot more of my work actually has been outside of Springfield.
Very cool.
And how do they look at you as a Midwesterner working for them, a coastal company?
I think the whole division, the internet has changed. I'll try to get a sentence out.
No,
it doesn't matter. I think the whole thing is changed. to be a quote-unquote professional designer 15 years ago, you had to be in New York. You had to be on the East Coast. Or you had to be, if you're a web developer, even 10 years ago, you had to be in San Francisco. I don't think that matters anymore. And I think more and more companies really understand that. I mean, with the internet, I can do most things that I need to. I can interact. I can I can get on Slack. I can get on email or whatever. When I need to be in person, I can be there. It was just flight. So I think that whole I think that observation of oh, well, maybe you're not a professional because you're in the Midwest. I think that's lessening a lot more, and it's just kind of going away because everyone's understanding. Well, yeah, I mean, we live now, thankfully, due to the internet, in a time that we don't have to physically be together at all times.
Yeah.
It's hard sometimes to work remotely, and it's really difficult sometimes. I really like face-to-face stuff, so I'm very much willing to travel. But I don't think there's that. I don't know that I've ever gotten this oh wait, you're from Missouri? Oh, right. I don't know. I don't know if you're really up to snuff. One thing that was fun when we were traveling for Linotype the film, we traveled a lot on the East Coast, New York, Boston, some on the West Coast, and they always asked, "Oh, where are you from?" And they always assumed that we were just a production company from New York, and I kind of liked saying, "No, we're from we're from the Midwest. We're from a small town in Missouri." Partially they didn't know where it was.
Right.
Then they'd of course make the Springfield joke of the Simpsons because
in
Springfield everything is the Simpsons. But I kind of like that because the thing with the Midwest is people don't expect a lot from you, so you can kind of over deliver and surprise people in nice ways, and you don't have to have the pretense of oh, I'm a production company from Los Angeles and we're really important because we're from LA or we're really important because we're from New York. I don't think it matters if you make good work. As long as you're making good work, it doesn't matter anymore where you live, and I think that's nice.
Yeah. And something weird that's been kind of a common theme as we've teased these answers out of different guests that we've had is the division is not so much a geographic one or even a skill or talent based one anymore. It's it's kind of those humble beginnings that a lot of us have when you grew up in this area and you were you're in a small town where literally there was a flea market and like a gas station,
right? And
you learn it's just kind of that hardiness and that personality, that personalization of being able to walk up to somebody because you have to know everybody and you have you get used to knowing people face to face and that's how you connect with people, and so that comes through in a lot of these digital communications now. Yeah. And they're like, oh, this guy's really personable, and you're like,
yeah, right. Right. Yeah, I think that is definitely the Midwest thing of of being nice to people and being outgoing. I mean, I definitely myself am an outgoing person just in general, but I think that the people that I've worked with have liked the ability that I can relate. I think that's another thing, being from the Midwest, I hope that I don't have a specific mindset or a specific take on a certain person or a certain situation. Perhaps someone in New York would look down on somebody from the Midwest or from the South, or somebody from the South wouldn't trust a Yankee or whatever. I think Missouri is kind of nice. It's so weird and in the middle that there is a fair amount of, I mean, there's not a lot of diversity, which bothers me, but there's a fair amount of other types of people. There's liberal people in the Midwest and there's conservative people in the Midwest, and I think being from the Midwest, it allows you to hopefully just kind of be open a bit more and a bit more outgoing to those people, and to be nice. I think when you're working with somebody in general, you want to work with nice people, and I think that helps. And so if you are nice and if you are outgoing and if you don't have that pretense of whatever East Coast or whatever, pretense of wherever. I mean, because there's pretentious people in Missouri and there's pretentious people
absolutely
everywhere. But if you are nice and good at your work and good at communicating, I think that pays off in quite big volumes.
Yeah. It is hilarious to me how Missouri has been consistently confused, even through American history, just where it stands. And
I think Missouri. So I talk a lot about Missouri to other people, and especially Springfield. Missouri's a funny state because we're not west and we're not east, and we're not north and we're not south. And it's that weird thing, but I really kind of like that. But there are definitely, backwoods southern people in Missouri, and there are definitely blue-blooded liberal people in Missouri. And I think that I think that a lot of people that have not been to the Midwest or to Missouri just consider Missouri, oh, well, it's just flyover country.
Yeah.
Wait, you're not in California, you're not in New York, you're not in Chicago, well, whatever, I don't care about you. And I think that's just a misconception.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line. And I'm like, well, okay, you can think that if you want, but there are super liberal people here as well. And yes, okay, maybe our state in general voted for George W. Bush, but I didn't, and other people didn't, or whatever. Like, I do get a little frustrated with people that just like, oh, you dumb idiots in the Midwest.
Right. Yeah.
Like, well, okay, you dumb idiots in New York, because it's the same thing. Like, there are as racist of people in New York as there are in Springfield, and vice versa. Like, and I think that's something I've learned, that everywhere you go, there are good people and there are bad people, and there are talented people and there are untalented people, and I think what's nice is the internet is definitely erasing a lot of that understanding of like, wait, you're from the Midwest? Oh, let me look at you again, because before I would have totally ignored you, but yeah, it looks like you do good work. Okay.
That's neat.
And so I think that's nice. I think that's a nice thing. Hopefully the good of the internet, besides cat videos, is like the idea of kind of evening the playing field. So if you do good work, you can have as much exposure being from the Midwest as you can being from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, let's switch gears just a little bit and talk about Linotype, the film. So we were talking a little bit beforehand. I had no idea that you had just gotten into filmmaking like 5 years ago.
Yeah, well, yes.
I mean, that is just crazy, and it is such an amazing film. I remember watching it and being like, wait, I was looking at the credits like, wait, this guy's from Springfield? I had no idea. And it's such an amazing film. I love it.
Well, I wasn't the only person to make the film. I worked with Brandon Goodwin and Jazz Hewlett. So, I definitely, it was not a solo venture, but it definitely was my baby.
Yeah.
And so Linotype totally came out of my naivete, as I said, of just wanting to tell the story of the Linotype. So while I was in graphic design school at Missouri State, I taught myself letterpress printing, which is this old-fashioned technology of printing before new technologies. I won't get into that because it's kind of boring. But I taught myself letterpress printing, and so I visited. There's only one or two shops here in Springfield that still have any letterpress equipment, and so I visited one, which was Tim Trower's shop, who is featured in the film. And I just happened to visit one day that he had the Linotype on and hot, and so I was looking at different equipment. And he said, "Well, have you seen this?" And he showed me the Linotype, and I'd never seen it. And I was like, what the hell is this crazy machine? Can we, I don't know. If
no, you're fine.
Yeah.
I was just like, what is this machine, this crazy thing? And how do I not know about it? I'm a graphic designer studying printing, and I've never heard of the Linotype machine. And so I went home and did research, and found out more information about the Linotype and how big of an impact it had on the world, but no one knew about it. It was this weird machine that was in the back of print shops. The people knew that they got a daily newspaper. They didn't care how they got it, right? But this machine, if it had not have been invented, we wouldn't have Twitter the way that we have it now. We wouldn't have CNN. We wouldn't have the 24-hour news and up-to-date news in the form that we have it now if it wasn't for this weird machine invented in the late 1800s. So I saw this machine and I said, somebody needs to tell the story. So that was it. That's where it all started from. And I was like, well, it's such a visual machine. You've got to show the machine. And so the more I dug into it, the more I realized there were some other weird, crazy old guys that have these machines and still love them. And so I talked to my friend Brandon and Jess and said, hey, I want to make a short film. Originally, we were just going to make like a 5 or 10 minute film to put on YouTube because everything else was just, little shaky camera video. I wanted to do something nice and high quality. We shot for a couple days here with Tim. We went up to one place in Iowa to shoot. And then from there, we launched a Kickstarter and it was successful. And we realized people on the internet like really were interested in this weird machine. And like what I liked is that people that were like web designers were interested in the Linotype, which I didn't expect at all. And so that was really, really cool. And it kind of just snowballed from there to make a full feature-length film. And it's been very well received and traveled the world. And we didn't win an Academy Award, but that's fine because we didn't set out to. I just, that's kind of nice getting back to your original question. Not being a filmmaker, not going to film school, I didn't feel any pressure to like, oh, I've got to make this my first film, and after this film I got to make a next film, and after this one, like, if I never make another film, I'm really proud of what we made. And I think that coming from the outside perspective, I had no preconceived notions of how to make a film, which is both good and bad.
Sure.
I made tons of mistakes, but I also made a lot of decisions that made the film unique and made the film what it was, because I didn't have to worry about, well, am I doing it the right way or not? I was like, oh crap, I just have to make it.
Yeah, well, and I appreciate the note on, like, because I'm a developer by trade, but I went to school for audio video and have a background in photography and things like that. And so it's fun to see those kind of cross-discipline interests where there's some connecting point. And again, I think this gets back to what you were saying about the internet, kind of decentralizing things where, before it was you are in the film industry. I remember I looked at San Francisco as a place to go for a web job. And I looked
of course.
at, and so, but I can watch things that people are making and appreciate them. There's some handcrafted goods here in town that I was like, oh my goodness, I love how these are made. I love the process, and I'm not a handcraft artist at all.
Right, of course.
But I can take interest in it because it's been decentralized and exposed to me.
Right.
And that's the cool thing about projects like yours is they kind of lift the lid and other people can look in and go, oh, I so appreciate that now.
Right.
It just kind of pulls everybody in.
Yeah, I've just never had patience for people that are like, oh, I'm going to put you in this box, and you're a photographer, and you're a web designer, and you're a graphic designer. Like, I don't know, to me, Linotype was telling a story, and that's what graphic design is. Whether you're working for an ad agency or yourself, you're telling a story, you're using visuals. Filmmaking just means it's a lot harder. It's just moving. It's just moving pictures. That's the thing. I don't see this big difference between filmmaking and graphic design. It's composition, it's visual storytelling.
Very good.
So that's I've never seen that division, and it's always bothered me that people have. But I think people are changing. Yeah, definitely. There's web designers that are making handmade leather goods. There are app developers that are dabbling in typography. All these sorts of things. I think that's great. Yeah. To me, you can no longer just stay in. I don't know. You can't stay in one thing your whole life. I just think that's boring.
Yeah, well, and the opportunities are there now between the internet and then between things like maker bots and all this other stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Now, you can dabble, as you said, in any of these things very easily.
Absolutely. It's that democratization of the technology has been amazing, because we couldn't have made Linotype the film, 5 or 6 years ago before we started. Like 10 years ago, no way. We would have had to have $300,000 worth of equipment, a professional edit bay.
Right.
The secret of Linotype the film is we actually edited on an iMac.
Nice.
Like, we used Final Cut Pro, but it was on an iMac. It was on Brandon's personal iMac. We were going to use this studio, and then he was more comfortable editing at home. We shot it with DSLR cameras,
Sure.
And that was a very specific decision that we made to shoot with DSLR cameras, but they were just kind of coming out at that point. The Canon, the 5D and the 7D had just come out. People were just starting to get into that, but I don't know, for $10,000 or $15,000 worth of equipment, we made a film that 5 years before that would have been a $250,000 project.
Exactly.
And that is awesome, and that's also scary, because that means a lot of idiots can make a lot of crap. It's the same with music, right? Anyone can now sit in their their home studio and record a pretty damn good sounding album. It doesn't mean it's good. And so I think that more and more people are becoming filmmakers, quote unquote, or more people are becoming whatever. It does make it more difficult to differentiate the good from the bad.
Right.
But I am very much okay with that. I'm very much happy that democratization has happened, because it's benefited myself and Brandon and Jess very well. There was no longer that huge divider of like, oh, these are pro filmmakers and these are amateurs. That line has totally gone away, or at least been really, really blurred. And if you are really good and you still have a good sense of composition and filmmaking, you can make a good film. You can also take the same equipment and make a terrible film.
Right.
So it's up to you to tell a good story. But thankfully, the equipment and the processes are more and more becoming easier and easier.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I do want to give a quick shout out to Someone Still Loves You, Boris Yeltsin.
Yes, absolutely.
Actually, when I was watching the screening of Linotype at the Moxie, I watched the credits. I was thinking about podcast music, intro music for us, and I watched the credits. I was like, this would be perfect music for our podcast. So that's actually where I got the inspiration for our podcast theme music.
Awesome. Yeah. So Someone Still loves you, Boris Yeltsin. Still hard to say. Sizzleby. Part of the reality is that when one of the pitfalls of not knowing what you're doing with filmmaking is I had no idea that you had to license music.
Right.
And it costs tens of thousands of dollars to license good music. So we were like, oh crap, what are we going to do for music? And so, thankfully, Jess knew the guys from Boris Yeltsin, and they were really, really helpful, and they gave us a really good discount to be able to use their music. And so a lot of the music is Boris Yeltsin, and then also a band that I guess is still no longer around, Cornbelt Chorus, but several of our friends are in Cornbelt Chorus. They're from Springfield. So a lot of the music is from Springfield. And what I like about Linotype, that kind of brings up another point, we so focus on trying to make this a Springfield production. Our color corrector was Dax Bedell. He's here in Springfield, Missouri, and he's a super talented color corrector. Dana Dominguez did our audio mixing, and he was, I guess he's now out in DC, but he was from Springfield, Missouri. Music's from Springfield. The three of us are from Springfield. So, like, again, 10 years ago, no way could we have made a film and almost all of the main talent being from Springfield, Missouri. Like, and I think that's something we really focused on and really we were proud of, and I don't think that the quality suffered. In fact, I think the quality was as good as many other productions out there. And so that's fun to be able to work with people in Springfield. Was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's like you said, once you uncover the people that are around you, sometimes you get surprised at the creativity that's in the woodwork. And,
yeah, for sure.
It just, you learn to draw it out and go visit people and kind of be a little outgoing and
right, yeah,
find some neat stuff along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you also, so going back to your kind of, as far as your schooling and then discovering the letterpress and things like that, you spent some time over in England and Europe, right, is to study some of that? Yeah,
well, actually, in Switzerland. So, I did letterpress printing. I got connected with some good friends, well, now are good friends of mine, a gallery / online shop in London, England that sells, I did a bunch of posters and they've sold my posters for years. But my wife actually was getting her master's degree at Missouri State in public health, and she took a summer internship in Geneva, Switzerland. So her and I moved to Geneva, and I found a place that I could work as a letterpress artist in residence there. So for that summer, I mean, it was actually really great. It sounds ridiculous, but we also, we ate cheese and baguettes because we had no money, because Geneva was very expensive. But yeah, we spent the summer in Geneva. She worked at the World Health Organization, part of the UN, and I worked as a letterpress artist in residence, basically just printing whatever I wanted to. I found this old shop in Geneva that had all this equipment, and basically they let me print there for the summer. So yeah, so we did a little bit of traveling. We lived overseas for just for the summer, but it wasn't formal training, but it was kind of just taking advantage of an opportunity that I had.
Well, it's just neat to see that, you get that exposure. You talked about the advantages of traveling even on the coasts for Linotype, and then getting that extra exposure of going overseas and seeing similar industry in a different place and stuff like that. It's just, I have to imagine that broadens your horizon a little bit.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, travel is very, very important to me, and being able to work with people. I think that's part of what's fun, is getting able to work with people outside of Springfield. I mean, the world is surprisingly small, and so I think that's always helped me. Everything from making connections to just seeing and working in a different atmosphere to kind of, I don't know, inspire. It sounds very trite that travel broadens your horizons, but I think it's really true.
It's important,
and it helps. And I think that's something that I really try to encourage people from Springfield to do. That is something that kind of bumps me out. A lot of people from Springfield don't travel very much, and I don't know, I want to encourage people to travel just to see how other people do life, and it inevitably informs what I do, whether it's my creative output or just what I think about a situation.
Very cool. One more thing that I really want to talk about is your involvement with biking.
Okay. Yes. Right.
That's just so cool. And I've seen pictures you post on Instagram and stuff of your travels, and I even poked into your, what is it, Kiva?
Strava. Yeah.
Profile.
Yeah. So Strava. Yeah. Right. So yes, I like to cycle. I like biking. 2 or 3 years ago, a friend of mine got into mountain biking, and so he got me into mountain biking, and so I borrowed his bike for a little while, and then I was like, oh my god, I love this. So I continued mountain biking, and then he, about a year ago or two, got into road biking, and so I got into road biking. So cycling to me, it's funny because it's something that I did as a kid. Like, man, I would say from the age of 6 until 10 or 11, I mean, I would ride my bike. And I think most kids do this,
Right.
like, but I rode my bike.
Everywhere.
I remember
Yeah.
in summer, I mean, from sunrise to sunset, I rode my bike just everywhere. That's what I did, and I loved it. And then I don't know what happened. I just didn't ride my bike in high school and college, and then so my friend it kind of got me into mountain biking and just got me back into cycling. And so so I cycle. I try to cycle a lot. I'm definitely not a pro by any means. I'm definitely an amateur, but I like to bike. I have a road bike. I have a mountain bike. And yes, I use Strava. It's this kind of nerdy app where you track your rides and stuff like that.
Cool.
But it's kind of fun. And, I debated when I was redoing my website, I debated putting like a link to my Strava along with my Twitter and my email and everything. And I was like, oh, it's fun. Like, I don't know. To me, I'm most interested in people that have diverse interests.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so cycling is the most expensive. It doesn't give me anything. Like, it costs me money. I'm always buying new parts for my bike or whatever, and it's very expensive. But I do it it really helps me clear my head. It helps me think. It keeps me fit. I don't know. I like cycling, and I think I've found other people and made some really good friendships through cycling. It's actually even brought me design work now that I think about it. I worked at Sunshine Bike Shop here in Springfield.
Nice.
I worked with a good friend Adam Bolin, working on redesigning the website, or not their website, their logo and their identity and everything. And that all came from me being a Sunshine Bike Shop, what's the word? Customer.
Yeah.
And, going in, I'm always in the shop, always, buying stuff for my bike or,
Nice.
whatever. And I bought a couple bikes from them. And one day they were like, wait, aren't you a graphic designer? I was like, yeah. And so from that, they hired me to redesign their logo and identity and everything. So I guess in that sense, cycling has paid off a bit.
Yeah.
But I mean, cycling to me is just, it's fun. I like to do it. I like being outdoors, and
Right.
I never thought that I would like road biking. I thought, only mountain biking. But I'm more and more really into road biking as well.
Very cool. And so do you commute every day then?
Well, I do, but I commute like literally a quarter mile. My wife and I live on the other side of downtown. We're at Walnut and Jefferson.
Nice.
And my office is at Walnut and Campbell. So, I mean, yes, I commute, quote unquote, but it's very short. But yeah, I mean, I try to ride my bike. I like that. That's part of the reason we live downtown, is because we wanted to be close to my office, and we've always lived my wife and I have always lived downtown, or near downtown at least, within a few miles. To me, I really like downtown Springfield, try to support it, try to eat here and work here and live here, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I commute, but I don't know. I have some good friends that like really commute. They go 5 or 10 miles a day, and so I don't claim that I commute.
Sure.
But yes, I did ride my bike to work this morning.
There you
go. Because it's actually, honestly, would probably take me longer to walk down to my car, start it, sweat like crazy, turn on the air conditioner, drive through. I might as well just hop on my bike and get over here.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, as a wrap-up question, what advice would you have to your younger self, maybe your college student self at Missouri State University, with big dreams and aspirations,
right,
with your background now?
We really should warn people
I
about
know.
this.
I know.
It's kind of a bum.
No, it's a good question. I would, you know what? I of course I went to Missouri State. I never thought I would make a film. I never thought that making a weird independent documentary film would be what I would become, quote unquote, known for. I'm definitely not famous. People think like, oh, you went to London to show the film, you must be famous. No. I'm definitely not famous. But I think I would just say, it's kind of lame, but trust your gut, trust your instincts, follow what you're passionate in. The whole thing started, I was in graphic design, I liked computers, but I was like, man, I want something tactile. So I got into letterpress printing, and found all this letterpress equipment, and that was totally just following my passion. Letterpress wasn't the fashionable thing that it was, or it is now at that time. It was just very much the kind of the start of the curve. Now everyone's into letterpress, and it's great. But that was, so I was just following my interest in this weird kind of printing. And so through letterpress, got me into this interest of Linotype. And then I realized, well, nobody else is going to tell the story about the Linotype, so I might as well follow that and make a film about it. I don't know what's next. It's actually a very weird time in my quote-unquote career right now, I'll tell you. I may actually not be living in the Midwest very much longer, so I don't know if we can even
you're
air
fine.
this podcast or not. But I think, I just say just follow your interests, which sounds really cliche, but I think the whole thing with Linotype is it was a passion project. And I think, and I hope, and I do believe that that comes out in the final film. That it was something, and it was 2 years of blood, sweat, and tears, literally all three of those, to get the film out and to promote it and to get it out there for people to see. But following that, my gut instinct, and just like, there's something that interests me, and if I explore it, maybe other people are going to be interested in it. That's something that I would tell my younger self. Just follow your gut and follow your passions, which is not easy. Everyone now says, just follow your passions, quit your job, become a freelancer. It's really damn hard.
Yeah.
My wife worked for 2 years while I made literally $1,500 in 2 years while I was making the film. There were serious sacrifices that had to be made by myself and even more by my wife. And I think that's something, everyone's like, read these books and follow your passions. Yes. But guess what? You have to learn how to be an accountant. You have to learn how to budget. You have to really, it's not easy, but it's very worthwhile. And I think that's another thing, I guess I would tell myself is, it's not going to be easy. But to me, the pursuit of easy or the easiest path is very often less desirable and pays off less.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what I tell myself. I don't know if that's
a great answer.
But that's what I would say. Follow your passions, but it's going to be hard as hell.
Yeah.
But it's also going to be worth it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's the thing. It's going to be worth it.
Very good.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank
this
you
was
guys.
so
I
much
really
fun.
appreciate it. I hope it was helpful.
Yeah, no, it's been great. And you can get to know Doug by visiting his website at onpaperwings.com, or you can really get to know him by getting in touch with him on Twitter at RealDougWilson. And you can learn more about this show by visiting spiritofthemidwest.fm. Drop us a review if you like the show, or even if you don't. We appreciate the feedback, and we want your honest feedback, and it helps promote the show. And thanks for tuning in. Please join us next time as we celebrate the spirit of the Midwest.
I wanna show